Hi, and welcome to First Chapter Friday. This month we are looking at mystery, which is a genre we have not dealt with before in First Chapter Friday. Let me start off by showing you the cover of this book. This is The Inheritance Games. She came from nothing. They have everything. Let the games begin. This is written by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I would love to share with you the summary from the inside jacket just so you can get a sense of what this story is going to be like. Secret passages, elaborate riddles, billions at stake. Let the games begin. Avery Grams has a plan for a better future. Survive high school, win a scholarship, and get out. But her luck changes in an instant when billionaire Tobias Hawthorne dies and leaves her virtually his entire fortune. The only catch? Avery must move into his sprawling mansion full of secret passages, riddles, and codes. Unfortunately for Avery, Hawthorne House is also occupied by the family that Tobias Hawthorne just disinherited. This includes the 4 Hawthorne grandsons, dangerous, magnetic boys who grew up with every expectation that one day they would inherit billions. Heir apparent Grayson Hawthorne is convinced that Avery must be a con woman, and he's determined to take her down. But his brother James views her as their grandfather's last hurrah, a twisted riddle, a puzzle to be solved. Caught in a world of wealth and privilege, with danger around every turn, Avery will have to play the game herself just to survive in this twisty, thrilling mystery. So, obviously very interesting in terms of what kinds of puzzles and mysteries lie ahead. I will tell you that this is one of those times when I wish I could read you more than a chapter for First Chapter Friday, because I really do feel like the story doesn't really get its momentum until about 3 or 4 chapters in. But that being said, you will at least get a little bit of the writing style of the author, and you'll get an introduction to the character who is kind of entertaining in and of herself. So let's dig into chapter 1 of The Inheritance Games. When I was a kid, my mom constantly invented games. The quiet game, the who can make their cookie last longer game. A perennial favorite, the marshmallow game, involved eating marshmallows while wearing puffy Goodwill jackets indoors to avoid turning on the heat. The flashlight game was what we played when the electricity went out. We never walked anywhere. We raced. The floor was nearly always lava. The primary purpose of pillows was building forts. Our longest lasting game was called I Have a Secret, because my mom said that everyone should always have at least one. Some days she guessed mine. Some days she didn't. We played every week right up until I was 15, and one of her secrets landed her in the hospital. The next thing I knew, she was gone. Your move, princess. A gravelly voice dragged me back to the present. I don't have all day. Not a princess, I retorted, sliding one of my knights into place. Your move, old man. Harry scowled at me. I didn't know how old he was really, and I had no idea how he'd come to be homeless and living in the park where we played chess each morning. I did know that he was a formidable opponent. You, he grumbled, eyeing the board, are a horrible person. 3 moves later, I had him. Checkmate. You know what that means, Harry? He gave me a dirty look. I have to let you buy me breakfast. Those were the terms of our long-standing bet. When I won, he couldn't turn down the free meal. To my credit, I only gloated a little. It's good to be queen. I made it to school on time, but barely. I had a habit of cutting things close. I walked the same tightrope with my grades. How little effort could I put in and still get an A? I wasn't lazy. I was practical. Picking up an extra shift was worth trading a 98 for a 92. I was in the middle of drafting an English paper in Spanish class when I was called to the office. Girls like me were supposed to be invisible. We didn't get summoned for sit-downs with the principal. We made exactly as much trouble as we could afford to make, which, in my case, was none. Avery. Principal Altman's greeting was not what one would call warm. Have a seat. I sat. He folded his hands on the desk between us. I assume you know why you're here? Unless this was about the weekly poker game I'd been running in the parking lot to finance Harry's breakfasts, and sometimes my own, I'd no idea what I'd done to draw the administration's attention. Sorry, I said, trying to sound sufficiently meek. But I don't. Principal Altman let me sit with my response for a moment and then presented me with a stapled packet of paper. This is the physics test you took yesterday. Okay, I said. That wasn't the response he was looking for, but it was all I had. For once, I had actually studied. I couldn't imagine I'd done badly enough to merit intervention. Mr. Yates graded the test, Avery. Yours was the only perfect score. Great, I said in a deliberate effort to keep myself from saying, okay, again. Not great, young lady. Mr. Yates intentionally creates exams that challenge the abilities of his students. In 20 years, he's never given a perfect score. Do you see the problem? I couldn't quite bite back my instinctive reply. A teacher who designs tests most of his students can't pass? Mr. Altman narrowed his eyes. You're a good student, Avery, quite good, given your circumstances. But you don't exactly have a history of setting the curve. That was fair. So why did I feel like he'd gut-punched me? I am not without sympathy for your situation, Principal Altman continued, but I need you to be straight with me here. He locked his eyes onto mine. Were you aware that Mr. Yates keeps copies of all his exams on the cloud? He thought I'd cheated. He was sitting there staring me down, and I'd never felt less seen. I'd like to help you, Avery. You've done extremely well given the hand that life has dealt you. I would hate to see any plans you might have for the future derailed. Any plans I might have? I repeated. If I'd had a different last name, if I'd had a dad who was a dentist and a mom who stayed at home, he wouldn't have acted like the future was something I might have thought about. I'm a junior, I gritted out. I'll graduate next year with at least 2 semesters worth of college credit. My test scores should put me in scholarship contention at UConn, which has one of the top actuarial science programs in the country. Mr. Altman frowned. Actuarial science? Statistical risk assessment. It was the closest I could come to double majoring in poker and math. Besides, it was one of the most employable majors on the planet. Are you a fan of calculated risks, Miss Grams? Like cheating? I couldn't let myself get any angrier. Instead, I pictured myself playing chess. I marked out the moves in my mind. Girls like me didn't get to explode. I didn't cheat, I said calmly. I studied. I'd scraped together time in other classes between shifts later at night than I should have stayed up, knowing that Mr. Yates was infamous for giving impossible tests, had made me want to redefine possible. For once, instead of seeing how close I could cut it, I wanted to see how far I could go. And this was what I got for my effort, because girls like me didn't ace impossible exams. I'll take the test again, I said, trying not to sound furious or worse, wounded. I'll get the same grade again. And what would you say if I told you that Mr. Yates had prepared a new exam? All new questions, every bit as difficult as the first. I didn't even hesitate. I'll take it. That can be arranged tomorrow during third period. But I'll have to warn you that this would go significantly better for you if now. Mr. Altman stared at me. Excuse me? Forget sounding meek. Forget being invisible. I want to take the new exam right here in your office right now. So, my dears, this is your introduction to what is a 3-part trilogy. So you won't get definite answers at the end of the inheritance games. For that, you are going to have to plug into all 3 of the books in this series, which include The Hawthorne Legacy and The Final Gambit, all of which are available to you in the classroom library as well as on our school website through Destiny Discover and in our school library. So if you were interested in what you just heard, please feel free to jump into this as your next literary adventure. And if you weren't fond of it, then don't worry. Next month, we'll have a different first chapter Friday.